that. Here we are, Vaughan. You made it.
I did.
A few minutes on the plane, and you arrived in San Francisco.
That's right, yeah.
How is it? How's RSA Conference treating you?
RSA is amazing as always.
Yeah?
Just really exciting time, catching up with a lot of people, seeing what's happening in the vendor space. Yeah, very exciting.
Very good. We'll talk about some of the conversations you had. Before we get into all the fun and goodness of what RSAC Conference brings, maybe a few words about yourself, your role with Cydarm.
So I'm the co-founder and CEO at Cydarm Technologies, and we are a cyber incident response management platform. And put simply, that means case management for SOC.
Case management for SOC. And so what is the biggest challenge that most of your customers face when they're kind of putting their SOC program together?
Usually people need a way to record information. Often that's to track status on what threats they're currently facing in real time. Often it's so they can go back and do lessons learned or look at metrics over a period of time. And increasingly we're seeing regulators wanting to get a very accurate and detailed description of who knew what when. And so Cydarm is, if you will, it's your system of record for recording what goes on in the SOC, so that you can come back later and provide information to all those.
A system of record, what does that mean? Do many organizations actually think about that, or they just kind of run free and do the response willy-nilly?
It depends on the type of organization. So most of our customers are either in government and state and federal government, defense, or critical infrastructure. Some industries, maybe the threshold for regulatory compliance and the need to get better at cyber operations is not as strong. But certainly in government and regulated organizations, I used to work in federal government, and they had a saying, good record keeping is good governance. And I think that's a very strongly held belief with those organizations, and yeah, that's why they see value in it.
And because in the States I've seen some movement here, and obviously you do work in the States as well, but have you seen a shift where cyber insurance and perhaps even some legal teams want to have that system of record as well?
Definitely, there are many stakeholders now that have a view in on incident response. The ones you just mentioned are communications people. So as an incident escalates, when you call it a capital I incident, it's declared as an incident. At that point, you need to get legal involved. If it's inside a threat, HR might even have a role to play. Like I mentioned, communications, C-suite, board. Everyone has a part to play. Privacy teams, vulnerability management. It often goes beyond the SOC. There's many adjacent teams, up and down and outside the organization.
So how does Cydarm help kind of bring those people together and give them the space to do what they need to do?
Yeah, so first of all, we have a fine-grained access control system. It starts with multi-tenancy. We can have multiple organizations on the same platform. We do this in one major government organization where they have several adjacent teams that each have effectively a siloed set of case management. We think of them as risk owners. And then those risk owners can actually share cases between them or even transfer cases when they need to collaborate. And because the access control is very fine-grained, it's attribute-based, you can give people the exact access they need and no more. So it's very much balancing need to know with need to share. And that's a very federal government thing to say, by the way.
And so if organizations have done something to coordinate activities, it's probably through one of the many ticket systems they have in place, right? What are the challenges if they just tried to use that as a means to manage this?
Yeah, good question. Ticketing systems are everywhere. People trying to get by doing SecOps with ITSM, and the problem is it's not built for it, right? So a change outage or a system upgrade or a broken keyboard, it's not the same as adversarial cyber threat. You're not dealing with the same volume, velocity, variety, just the scale and speed and the false positives that you get in SecOps. ITSM just isn't built for that. And a lot of the ticketing systems, they're clunky. It's typing text in a box, and that's pretty much all you get. Right. We provide more of a rich experience that's better designed for high volume, high frequency information. The guidance to the development team is make it feel more like WhatsApp and less like ITSM. And then we have support for different data formats that are commonly used. It's really that quality of life that's built specifically for SecOps that you just don't, and people come to us, they're using ticketing systems, they come to us because they want a better solution.
Right.
You can build it in-house by modifying existing software, but then you have to maintain a mess. So we just make it nicer.
Right. And so does everybody then come into Cydarm, or are there ways that they still operate in their own world as well, depending on what their role is in the response? And if so, how do you enable that to happen?
I mean, it really depends on the organization and how they wish to organize their operations, beyond the SOC. In some cases, we've had multi-tenanted setups where we're sharing information between different sub-organizations on the one system. In other cases, they want to be able to send emails off platform. So we can start an email thread, loop some people in, and then track that email thread and keep returning the replies onto the case. They don't get access to the case management. You can also send notifications. All of the popular messaging apps are supported. Different ways to keep people involved, collaboration, without necessarily having them logged in on the platform.
Got it. And that's through some integrations that you provide? How does that work?
Yeah, so we integrate, we've got different, it's really, we have this concept of platform events. So platform events can trigger an automation to fire. And the way we've gone about this, it's a very carefully thought out architecture, very thoughtful approach where we have these external components that actually handle the integration, and they're highly configurable, but we provide out-of-the-box configuration that's very simple to use.
Okay.
So often just as simple as, we call it EzyConnect. You simply open a dialog, drop in an API key, check boxes for the features you want, maybe a notification on this, a notification on that, hit submit, and it just works.
Okay.
But then if you want to go really deep and edit the templates and change the type of information you're sending to the remote platform or how the responses are formatted, you can do that as well.
So every business is different, every sector is different. Certainly technology stacks underneath all the SOC and everything that's running the business could be different. I guess basically the teams build a process to match what they have, right? Or they have something that then determines how they build their process for managing incidents. How do you help a team kind of walk from A to Z in line with how they know they need to manage that response based on who's involved and what's going on? I'm talking about playbooks and tabletop exercise and things like that. How do you map what they want to what you offer?
Yeah, good question. So what we do is we have a NIST-aligned workflow at the basic level, and I just want to throw an idea out there that process. Someone, this is not my idea. I heard this somewhere else. Process is collaboration, right? So often a process exists to enable collaboration at the various points.
Okay.
So we're clearly identifying what stage of a response we're in, and then within that we have a set of actions that are performed that often involve notifying people where you're up to, and performing handoff in some cases, or tasking, that sort of thing. So what we do is we have that NIST-aligned workflow at one level, and you can customize that if you want to do a variation of that. And then we also have specific playbooks for different incident types, and that's down more at the level of, you might have a phishing playbook, you might have a playbook for compromised credentials, DDoS, all that sort of thing. And we provide some out of the box. You can also make your own if you wish, duplicate the existing ones, modify them. We have two different types of playbook. So we have checklists, which are simply textual descriptions of what you might do at each step. And then we have more of a branching playbook system, which is based on OASIS CACAO, and that's allows you to have decision points and more of a structure, if you want to have that process rigor.
So what's the experience like for, let's say, a CISO who's probably, I don't know if they freak out because they're kind of dealing with this stuff all the time. Let's say it's a significant issue, though, and there's a lot of stress. What's the experience for a CISO kind of managing all this stuff?
The biggest problem, I believe, is just being aware of what's going on, right? Having that information capture. I know let's say a security leader at a very well-known household brand who told me that they once went for nearly 5 days without sleep, and the days were spent basically walking around the SOC floor with a spiral-bound notebook, just jotting down notes about where everybody was, where they were up to, what they'd observed, what they were doing, and then taking all that data and bringing that back to their computer and basically creating a deck with a situation report, so that at 0800 hours next morning they could show, the board, the executive, where this large-scale incident was up to, and what resources needed to be brought to bear on it. So that kind of nightmare situation, going without sleep, and having to do this manual. I mean, by the time you collect that data, it's already out of date.
Right.
It's obsolete, right? So you're giving an aged sit rep by the time you do it. They successfully navigate through that incident, but this person said they never want to have to live that way again. And if you've got a platform that's a system of record but easy to use, so you don't have to force people to use it, they're going to use that as their scratch pad. No more email drafts, no more notepad. You're putting the data straight into the case management system, and so it's immediately visible, when you need an update of where things are at.
Right. It's easy to get information because they're probably sitting in front of a SIM or a SOAR and probably a bunch of other systems providing context that maybe those other platforms didn't have access to at the time or whatever. So it's easy to pull all that information in and into Cydarm.
So Cydarm deals with, if you think about the information hierarchy of data, information, knowledge, and optionally wisdom above that, it's contextual, right? So data in context is information in context is knowledge. Cydarm sits more at the boundary of information and knowledge. So really what we're doing is not trying to capture full log take or bulk data. I mean, you can store that on there if you want to preserve that artifact, but really it's about preserving that which is important. So what were the observations that were critical to determining the status of the incident? What was the significant actions taken and why? Right. What important decisions were made and when and by whom? Recording that sort of information is what we do, and with supporting evidence along the way.
So kind of going to the system of record, you talked about decisions being made. Obviously having the information to make a good decision quickly, because indecision is horrible. And then the context maybe leading up to why that decision was made and who's making it. I'm assuming that's all part of the system of record, which is good to, you mentioned, look back, but also somebody's probably going to be looking in some cases. So describe what's in that and how, I guess as a CISO, I'd want to know that I'm doing it in the right way to support the business recovery, but also in the right way that I'm protecting myself and my team, that we did in fact make the right decision based on the information we had.
Yeah, I mean, I think accountability is very important. Yeah. And I think knowing what we knew at a given time and why we did something, maybe if knowing more, we would have done it differently if we'd known this incident was going to escalate. But at the time, we did it with the best information we had. I think having that accountability, having that not only decision support but decision awareness gives you the confidence to move faster and make better decisions.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So, kind of back to the other side of the coin there, for post response analysis and whatnot. How do you see organizations kind of coming out of that and applying the learnings, let's say, from Cydarm to prepare better for the next one, or perhaps even to say we need to change our mitigating controls or our risk management or our policy, whatever it is that got us here in the first place because we left some exposure and then weren't able to respond like we wanted. How does that close the loop? And maybe some examples of customers that have done that.
Yeah, there's three different ways you can use a system of record to better prepare. So one is at the individual incident level, or you can analyze an incident group where you've put a number of cases together into one group, generating a report. In Cydarm, you can switch on and off significance levels. So what you send to, for example, an executive audience will not have the same crunchiness as what you use internally for PIR, right? So you generate a report on the incident, and then you can go through with timestamps in your time zone. We have very precise time zone setting on the system. You can go through in your time zone and figure out who did what when, and perform an analysis as a team, of how you could do better, what we can learn from it. Can we build a new playbook? Can we adjust the playbook based on how we went? What actions were recorded against the steps in a playbook? So that's one way to utilize it. And everyone wants to be able to do lessons learned. Who's got time for that? Right? How do you even figure out what happened if you didn't, write it down as you were conducting the incident? So we make that process really easy. The second thing is when you look at data over a period of time, and if you've got good metrics capture, and we enable mandatory collection metrics, so tagging, metadata. What are you recording about each incident? The disposition of the incident, the type of incident, what severity level, what systems were targeted, maybe what systems were producing the alerts. All of this is valuable metrics that you can collect and observe over time. And for example, it's useful to know what is the characterization of the threat environment that we're seeing in the SOC. And why that's important is because your controls are not going to tell you that, because if they were working 100%, you wouldn't need a SOC, right? So what you're doing in this environment is capturing what's left after you apply all the protective controls. And what that leaves you is a set of data that you can use to inform decisions around your control posture. So where do we need to shore up? Do we need better email filtering? Do we need protective DNS? Where are we seeing the most threat activity? And that, you're informing those decisions. You're also gathering data on the efficacy of the response. So how long are we spending in triage, analysis, containment, so forth? That can be used for resource justification. So resource allocation, asking for more resources. I know someone who is different person to the last example, but a security leader at a household brand, right? They've never had a breach. They have a really hard time justifying why they have this huge team and all these resources. But if you can capture the metrics and you can capture the data about how long it takes to respond, then you can demonstrate why this is just enough,
right,
or maybe not quite enough. So you're justifying your next purchase from one of the vendors down on the floor there, or you're justifying why you need more headcount.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, some great examples there, Vaughan, and I'd love to hear more. Sadly, we're running out of time here. So, Vaughan, just the idea that I could not have to lose sleep for 5 nights, that's a selling point enough for me, but I'm sure you have a gazillion of examples where customers can save time and headache and actually catch some sleep and run their team in a way that they're not killing themselves. I would encourage everybody to connect with you, Vaughan, connect with the Cydarm team, and chat with Vaughan. I'm sure you have plenty of other case studies and use cases you can share with folks.
Thanks, Sean. Really appreciate it.
Yep, good stuff. Thanks, everybody. Stay tuned for more.